everyone, happy Thursday again. Thank you all for tuning in to another episode of the Killer Comic Show. We are on episode 18. I can't believe it has been amazing, so thank you so much for tuning in every Thursday. Now, this one for me was very exciting because I was given the opportunity to sit down and chat with the one and only Richie, who is, of course, the CEO and founder of the fantastic Boom Studios, publisher of Something is Killing the Children, Once and Future, We Only Find Them When They're Dead, Seven Secrets, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, The Lumberjanes, and many, many more. Over the years, Ross has won Publisher of the Year 9 times from Diamond Comic Distributors, published 5 New York Times bestsellers, and produced feature films Two Guns, The Empty Man, and a fantastic new upcoming TV show called Just Beyond that will be featuring soon on Disney+, and make sure you tune in for that. I think with that said, I think it's time for us to just sit back, relax, grab a coffee, grab a beer, and find out what an amazing guy Richie is and how fantastic Boom Studios is and how it all started. See you on the other side, guys.
And on the independence and still be able to buy, an X-Men comic. Mm-hmm. And so that was my passion. And I remember probably when I was 10, I was drawing, always drawing. And I decided that I was going to draw superhero greeting cards and that I would sell the designs. I don't know what I was thinking. And I asked my mom, do you think I could be a comic book artist? And my mom said, oh, honey, you're so smart, you could be the publisher. And I thought to myself, who would want to be a publisher? That sounds terrible. What a bad job. And so this is the grand irony as I remind my mom that she knew that I was going to be a comic book publisher, and I didn't. And so, when I was growing up, I was going to be an artist. Then I went to college and I enrolled in painting and drawing as my major. And I kind of got a little bored. I think maybe I got the wrong instruction. But I just was having a hard time sort of conceptualizing how I was going to have a career. And so they had a film department at the University of Texas. And this is a time period when independent film was very exciting and things were exploding. And so I decided that since they had a camera, which cost thousands and thousands of dollars, which I didn't have, and they had knowledge and expertise about, they had editing equipment and they knew how to process film and all this stuff. They had resources, is what you would say nowadays. Mm-hmm. So I enrolled in the film department. And I figured, if it didn't work out, I could always, change my mind. And I went to school with Robert Rodriguez. And so he was in my 30-person class. And that was contemporaneous with Owen Wilson and Luke Wilson at the University of Texas, as well as Matt McConaughey. There's a funny story. My senior project, we were casting, and my director of photography had a guy come to him and say, there's this actor, and he really wants to be in student projects. And my director of photography said, give me his description. How tall is he? Blah, 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 blah. What color is his hair? Yada, yada, yada. Well, he's not appropriate for the part. And we'd say, okay, we're not going to cast him. And of course, that was Matt McConaughey. So I went to film school. I went out to Los Angeles. And there in LA, I ran around working as a production assistant. And then I was living on my credit cards. And I had spent some time with directors like Ted Demme, who directed Beautiful Girls, and driven some actors around that you would know. And then like Wally Shawn, who was, famously in Princess Bride. And so Never Saw Land War in Asia. And then I found myself loading on my credit cards, and it was a little scary. I was somebody that likes to pay my bills, and being able to pay your bills is no fun. Mm-hmm. And so I went to a comic book convention, and there was a guy that had a video that he was running at the Malibu Comics booth. And Malibu had this publishing line called the Ultraverse. And the Ultraverse had a character called Hardcase. And they had gone out and hired an MMA fighter and cast him as Hardcase. And they had shot a fight video that was sort of like one half music video. Not that anybody was singing, but it was in that style. Sort of abstract images with action with a fight. And I saw that it was a 35 millimeter production. And I had shot on 16 for 3 years at my film school. And so I said, how did you shoot this on 35 instead of 16? And the guy that was at the booth said, how can you tell the difference? I directed the movie. How can some comic book fan tell the difference between 16 and 35? And so we hit it off, and he offered me a job, and I went to go to work at Malibu Comics. And I never expected to work in the comic book business, and never in a million years, would have applied for a job there. I wouldn't have even thought of it. But I got offered a job when I needed a job, and I was, so fortunate because as I was going to work at Malibu, they had just launched Image, which a lot of people forget, and had done that first year of publishing with Image, and then they were into the Ultraverse, and so I worked with, a murderer's row of amazing, Barry Windsor Smith, Jim Starlin, Walter Simonson, Howard Shakin, Gil Kane, Steve Englehart, Steve Gerber. I mean, it's an incredible list of Hall of Fame great writers and artists, and had a great time. Marvel bought the company, and it was clear to me that their days were numbered. And so I decided that I had paid my bills, and it was time to get back to Hollywood and give that a shot.
That's pretty. That's just pretty awesome. Like that whole lowdown from going to that and just kind of not.
Oh, it's crazier. Sorry,
I was just starstruck then. I was kind of just there.
No worries. So I got a job as a script reader, and what a script reader is scripts get submitted to companies, and there's more scripts submitted than they have time to read, and so they bring in a freelancer whose job is to read scripts and analyze their story value. And so I eventually had a series of jobs that led me to be Arnold Schwarzenegger's reader.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so that was a lot of fun, and I enjoyed my time there. But I was getting older. I had optioned some comic books and taken them out and set them up as movies, and as a producer. So that basically meant that I would go to somebody who had a comic book and say, hey, I'd really like to take this comic book and shop it around. And if we don't get a deal, you don't get paid. I'm not going to get paid unless a movie gets made. But basically, if I could get a studio interested in optioning, paying a small payment against a larger payment for making your comic book a movie, then I get to produce it. And so I had some experience with some really big companies, and sold things into development at Paramount, sold them into development at Warner Brothers, and that was a great growth learning process for me. And worked with some really high-end producers who had done a lot of amazing things. I could list of Mike Medavoy, who greenlit Terminator, and Akiva Goldsman, who won an Oscar for A Beautiful Mind, and it was a great learning process. And so then nothing was really happening, and I was getting older, and so I had gotten to know Keith Giffen, and Keith Giffen called me up and he said, hey, I'm doing a book over at Image, and you're going to write it. And I said, well, Keith, the problem with this is I'm not a writer. Cool plan, bro, but I'm not a writer. And Keith said, writing a book, you're writing a book at Image, and I'm drawing it. And I said, the only problem with your plan is I'm not a writer. And he said, look, we're doing this book at Image, and you're going to write it. And I said, okay, Keith, so this is your last chance. So from my perspective, what's happening is one of my favorite writers and artists, who I followed his career since he was doing All-Star Comics in 1978. One of my favorite people, one of my good buddies, is asking me to write a comic book that he is going to draw, which is like a bucket list life, dream come true.
Yeah.
And he's not listening to me as I told him that I cannot do this. So here's how we're going to play this play. I'm going to go try to write this damn comic. I'm going to suck at it. Okay. And then you're going to rewrite me because you're actually a writer. And when you do it, you will not step on my toes, and I will not be upset, and it will not hurt my feelings and end our friendship, because I know I'm not good at this. And that's what we did. We did a book at Dominion, and a book called Dominion, and we did it at Image. And you'd be amused to know that one of the other projects that was launched as a part of the initiative was a little book called Invincible. So that's around 2004. And so I did that project with Keith, and then Keith said to me, you really need to publish comics. You need to be a comic book publisher. And I thought he was crazy, and he just kept giving me beer.
As payment.
No. It was as persuasion. He figured if he could get me drunk enough that I'd say yeah. And, I woke up the next day and I thought, Keith knows a lot about this business. And I think one of the things that's really unique about Keith that people don't necessarily track is he's been through so many different phases. Mm-hmm. So back in the 70s, he was the guy that drew like Jack Kirby on the Defenders. And then he became the artist who worked with Wally Wood to relaunch the Justice Society with All-Star Comics. And then he turned into the Legion of Superheroes guy. And then he was the Ambush Bug guy. And then he was the Funny Justice League guy. And then he was the Lobo guy. And we haven't even gotten to 52. No. And so you don't see many careers go that long. And you don't see many careers change over and over. Like I used to ask him about the Funny Justice League and why did he go in that direction? Yeah. And he said, well, Watchmen came out and Dark Knight. And it was clear that the way that you needed to go was funny. Mm-hmm. Because you can't get darker than Watchmen. You can't get more grim than the Dark Knight. Yeah. And so talk about a guy that can read the room, right? So I figured if Keith thought that I could publish, Keith was no dummy. And so I just made a deal with them where I was like, I'm going to call you every month and ask you to create a new series for me to publish because nobody's going to buy a book because it has the name Boom on it. They'll only buy it because it has the name Giffen on it. And he, of course, did that and helped launch me and, push me in this direction and this whole thing. It's Keith.
That's pretty so I guess would you say he's like one of your greatest influences?
Well, I think so. I don't know. It's a little apples and oranges. I mean, certainly as a literal influence for me to change my life direction, without question. And as somebody who believed in me, without question, I think on a day-to-day, I have Paul Levitz, who was the president of DC and was involved on the business side of DC for 35 years. Mm-hmm. And so Paul has been a real mentor to me for these past 8 years. But if you look at what is an influence on Boom's publishing, I think it's a real clear for me when I go back to being like 12, 13 and discovering independent comics. Mm-hmm. Comics of that era were Eclipse, and they were Pacific, and it was Kamiko. And those were the three real trailblazers that I think what they did was and I don't know if you know this comic history, so forgive me, but underground comics had come out in the late 60s. Mm-hmm. And the thing about the undergrounds that were interesting from a business perspective is that the creators held on to all the copyrights. Okay. And it was the first time that had ever happened in business because it was standard previously through publishing that the company had the copyright. And so the hippies that published that material, they didn't care about holding on to the copyright. Mm-hmm. There was no media or merchandising value to the Fabulous Freak Brothers, right? So just on a parallel track, so that's the late 60s. What was happening was the head shops that carried drug paraphernalia carried underground comics. Right, okay. And they started to also carry some of the mainstream comics. Mm-hmm. So they probably didn't carry Superman because he was too square, but some of them would carry Spider-Man. Mm-hmm. And then here in the States, in the mid-70s, what happened was there was a law that was passed that changed the rules if you could have a head shop in your neighborhood. And how the rules worked was if your community said it was okay, so like you lived in San Francisco,
Yeah.
okay, then you could have a head shop there. But if you were in suburban Dallas,
Yeah.
okay, they didn't want that in their neighborhood, and they could vote and they could pass an ordinance and you would be gone.
Oh, wow.
And so there's this huge network of stores that are carrying comics that overnight can't carry drug paraphernalia.
It's mental.
And they become the direct market.
Mm-hmm.
So that is what the early comic shops were.
Yeah.
Were head shops. Okay. So now this guy named Mike Friedrich comes in, who's from San Francisco, and he starts a company called Star Reach. And the idea of Star Reach is that he's going to take mainstream comic book artists like Jim Starlin, who want to keep their copyright and will work for less money because they were a startup and they couldn't afford to pay big page rates.
Yeah.
And be published in a format very similar to the Undergrounds. But it wasn't about drugs, and it wasn't about sex, and it wasn't about being outre in its approach. It was almost mainstream fantasy and science fiction stories. And that was Star Reach. And basically Star Reach is that bridge between the Undergrounds and then the mainstream publishers that spring up that influenced me, which is Pacific, Ellipse, and Kamiko. And that's kind of the progression of independent comic book publishing. And so when you look at Boom, when you look at the kinds of stories that we publish, it's fantasy, science fiction, action, horror, adventure of all these different kinds. Then when you get to Boombox, there's a lot of female-driven stories that are for a female audience. Or you get to Archaea, which is a company that I acquired. They are more of an artistic, that's where you see my art school roots, where it's more sophisticated. And then, of course, we have Kaboom, which does kid stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, it all seems to flow perfectly as you're saying it. But I mean, did you ever like wake up and think, I'm actually the CEO of Boom Studios, which is, let's be honest, in the last couple of years has become one of the most popular comic book companies in the world.
Thank you.
I think 100%. I mean, you've obviously got the mainstream players like Marvel and DC, but for me, Boom Studios is, you're leading the way. You're kind of doing stuff that these big guns should be doing.
Thank you.
I definitely think that. I mean, Boom Studios for me is one of my favorite. I'm not just saying this because you're on my show, but it's one of my favorite comic book companies. You can see behind, We Only Find Them When They're Dead, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, Seven Secrets, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. You've got your Boombox Wicked Things.
Yeah.
So there's so much to enjoy. And do you ever just wake up one morning and pinch yourself and think, oh, this is mine?
Well, there's, when you're doing the work, I think the best strategy is to always focus on what you need to get done. And, I'm here. How do I get here? And then once I'm here, how do I get here?
Yeah.
And invariably, that leads you to see what's not working. And so that can be tough because every day, you're a firefighter, right? You're getting up, you're putting out this fire, you're trying to make this work, blah, 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 blah. And it can lead to a more negative perspective. And so what I do is I try to take a breath. If I could go back in time and tell 12-year-old me that this is what I was going to do for a living, my head would explode.
Yeah.
And I know that everything is going to be okay. So, I'm a big believer in gratefulness, and I'm nothing but grateful. And, you and I talk about, I've been putting a lot of energy into my Instagram account. And what's been great about that is the fans are just so terrific and they're so kind and they give so much. And it really helps. It helps to understand, as tough as your day might be, having to straighten everything out and deal with all the pressure, that there's folks there that are excited about it. So,
I mean, it is, and like Instagram is such a it's a massive part of society now. It's kind of everyone's on it, so it's kind of like it's your online portfolio really. What you see and what you put out there, everyone's looking at. And it's great to see someone of your stature like interacting with the fans, the readers, and stuff like that, because it's so endearing to know that you haven't forgot your roots. You kind of know where you came from, and it is all about the fans. It's all about the comics and everything that's coming out. So it's great to see what you're posting on your stories, on your YouTube and everything like that, responding to the upcoming Power Rangers writers and drawers and everything like that.
What I used to love to do at conventions was I used to love to work the booth, because the fans come and buy stuff and they don't care who you are, right? They'll just be like, no, that sucks, I don't want that. And that's really useful for me to see people's reactions to what we're doing. And I would always do conventions, Baltimore, San Diego, New York, whatever. And then the problem got to be that people figured out who I was. And as soon as I stepped in behind the booth, I got buried in artist submissions and writer submissions. And so that's a part of the experience that I really miss. And so, hopefully Instagram can be that thing that can give me that back, because you got to listen to the audience.
Yeah. I mean, obviously with the pandemic that's going on, is that kind of why you kind of jumped into Instagram and YouTube like so much? Because I guess we can't do Comic Cons and everything at the moment, can we? I don't know what it's like over in Los Angeles at the moment, but
no, I mean it's it isn't why I did it. I mean, I can understand why people would connect the two, but it really is a way for me to I think the market is changing, and I think that a lot of people are not paying attention. And so this is a way for me to be able to interact with the market on the front line and have that experience. I would give you an example of, I think the way that retailers are doing exclusive covers is a completely new thing that I don't think people really understand the sort of fan ecosystem creating. And there's a bunch of things that are going on in the market. I mean, the amount of commerce that I see on Instagram that is done through Instagram with PayPal is pretty mind-blowing. And I think that there's this new fan that is being cultivated, and a different kind of fandom that's being cultivated online through the social media channels that I think is very distinct, and it has its own personality and approach, and it has different things. Not to go on too much, but one of the things that I think is really interesting about this fandom that's unique from other periods, if you talk to retailers, they say, it's the 1990s and people were collecting comics with huge print runs and they all wanted to get rich. I don't see fans wanting to get rich. I see fans celebrating their fandom. And, we have these fans that will chase down multiple kinds of variants. And we'll take pictures of it and show it off on Instagram, and there's never a conversation about what they're going to sell it for on eBay. They're not going to sell it. It's their collection. It's their pride and joy. It's something they love. And they're, there's another YouTube guy, Reggie from Reggie Collects. Great dude. I was on his show. He's a good example of, he bought An Unkindness of Ravens #1. He didn't think that it was for him. He doesn't like magic stories at all. He read it. He loved it. He went online, bought the 2 variants. There's a Jenny Frisman and I think it was Christina that did the other one. And he bought those 2 variants and then did an unboxing show where he opened up the box and showed everybody the variants. It was just celebrating your fan. And he spent an extra $8, right? So, I think we're in this renaissance. It's a new thing. And I think that fans are engaged and they're excited, and I think publishers should be paying attention.
I mean, that's kind of what I did. So when Mighty Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers came out, and it was the comic, you can see it behind me, with the Ninja Turtles holding the helmets. I was so behind getting all the variants of that, just so I had it. I'm not going to sell it. It's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Power Rangers are from my childhood. I grew up with them, so to be able to have that in this day and age in one comic book in fantastic variant covers like that, it was a no-brainer. There was no way I wasn't going to get it.
Yep. It's about collecting. It's about having fun.
And it's like the same has happened with Power Rangers and Mighty Morphin as well. You've got the two adjoining connecting covers, and it's just it just brings more energy. And it's kind of just like when I laid it out, I think I put a picture on Instagram, I laid them out, and I was just like, this is a piece of art. If you was to put them in a frame together.
Yep. Yeah, that's what it's about, is doing something really fun. And, you know, like with Mighty Morphin and with Power Rangers, I get asked once a week on Instagram, you know, we do a variant that's the legacy variant, right? So the last series ended at 55. So the first issue of Mighty Morphin, we had a legacy variant that was number 56. And then the first issue of Power Rangers, we had a legacy that was issue 57. And so I always get asked online, they were like, I thought this series was canceled with 55. What is, there's a 56 and a 57? I'm like, I explained the concept of what a legacy variant is.
Yeah.
And then fans are like, that's amazing, you know, and then they go buy more, you know, and it's because they want to keep that number going in their long box. And they want to be able to buy the covers that you're talking about that puts the art together.
Yeah.
And the reason we do that at Boom is that we're fans. It's like, what would you want? Right. And we sit around and we talk about stuff like that. Like the Rangers and Turtles, I put that deal together with IDW. I'm the one that reached out to them and said, let's do this crossover. And it's just, to me, it's like, it's a no-brainer. You know, it's like, I don't know if you're aware, the title Mighty Morphin, Power Rangers, comes from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yeah.
Like, they literally at Saban sat there and said, what should we call this show? Oh, let's model it after the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the way that it's named.
The full breakdown,
Yeah. And that, of course, you know, they picked the word morphin at the time because it was so hot. It was a big pop culture thing.
Yeah.
So, you know, just given the legacy and the crossover between the two, no pun intended, franchises, it's just a no-brainer.
Yeah. But I mean, I can speak for the thousands of fans you got out there. Thank you so much for putting that deal together, because it was insane. And I guess that's one of my fondest memories of growing up, seeing it, like getting up on a Saturday morning, watching the Turtles and then watching the Power Rangers and stuff. So, but one of your fondest memories must be when it was that light bulb moment and Boom was founded in 2005.
Well, I think it was. You're going to be much more amused by my answer. You know, the first solicitation that I put together for Boom, I emailed the information into Diamond Comic Distributors, which is the sole distributor, the direct.
Yeah.
And then I went and I laid down on the couch, and I was 100% firmly convinced that I had made a massive mistake. And that I had just set a bunch of money on fire because, of course, I was commissioning the work, the writers and the artists, to create the comic. And so I was filled with terror and dread. And, you know, and then the book came back and I got ordered pretty good. And I was kind of too young and stupid to know that it was real. I mean, how would I characterize it? It was like the orders were like a B or a B plus. But I was too young and stupid to know that at that stage, that's an A plus. Right? You know, like coming out of nowhere, having nothing. So there was a lot of mistakes where you're tripping into victory and not being appreciative of it. And I think, you know, it really is that story of like sitting there thinking, I have a once in a lifetime opportunity because Keith believes in me. And he has really sort of given me the belief, if not confidence, that this is something I could do. And then sort of, okay, if I'm going to do this, how do I put it together? And I was lucky because I had a lot of friends, and I basically called the friends. You know, Dave Johnson, who did the cover for Zombie Tales, was an old poker buddy. And my wife wrote one of the stories in it, you know, and she still hasn't been paid to this day. You know, she had a best friend who was a writer, and he got to write a story in it. And, you know, it was a family affair, really, with when I call my friends my family. And then sort of, the good news when you publish your first comic book is good news. You publish your first comic book. Bad news. You've published your first comic book.
Yeah.
So now what are you going to do? And so you have to publish a second and a third and a fourth and a fifth. And so it's it's pretty crazy, but it's a lot of fun.
I mean, because
it beats working.
Yeah, I mean, because they say don't mix business with pleasure, but you've got it coming from both ends. You've got your friends, your family, your wife who still hasn't been paid from God knows how long. That's going to come back and haunt you one day, Ross. It's going to be like, right, yeah.
Every day.
This IOU has just been going up and up and up.
Yep. Well, I'm very lucky indeed.
Yeah, I mean, it does sound great because then obviously from 2005 to 2007, it went from, I think it was Farscape and Warhammer. And I think Boom back then was known for posting like only original content, and then it kind of went over to the license side of things. Is that something that happened like organically, or was that it was just like a gradual transition that you kind of knew was going to happen over time?
The Warhammer deal, well, the Farscape deal is fun to talk about. The Warhammer deal was there had been a publisher called Speakeasy.
Mm-hmm.
They had some early success, but had launched really high level contemporaneous to Boom. And the guy that owned Speakeasy was a friend. And as he was going out of business, he had signed the Warhammer license. And he really had spent a lot of time and energy to get them into doing licensed comics.
Mm-hmm.
And he felt obligated that the deal be done. And so he called me up and said, I think this license is going to do really well. I think you should take this over. My company's going out of business. I'll go to work for you and I'll help you through this sort of like navigate taking on a licensed book. And so that's kind of how the Warhammer deal happened.
Mm-hmm.
And the Warhammer experience was really great because they had this thing at Games Workshop that was called the Wall of Awesome. And so as they were working on their different projects, whether it would be the cover for a novel or comics or video games or whatever it was, if artwork came in that they felt was amazing, they would put it up on the Wall of Awesome.
Oh, wicked. That does sound awesome, doesn't it?
Yeah. And so over and over and over again, they were so kind to us. They would say, you made the Wall of Awesome again. We don't have a partner external to Games Workshop that makes it on the Wall of Awesome as much as you do.
Mm-hmm.
And so they just kept putting up all this stuff, and it was amazing. And it was incredible the amount of material that we got done. I think we hit a wall with the license because, I would go to these retailer events, and these retailers would say, your Warhammer comic is really, really good. And I play Warhammer and I sell it in the store, but I got to get rid of all of it. And I said, why? And they said, well, Games Workshop has gone through and looked at the comic stores that sell the most Warhammer. And they've gone and opened a Games Workshop store like as close to that comic shop as they can.
Oh, wow.
Siphon off all of those fans and to be able to sell direct to those fans. And so they said, a Games Workshop store's opened up nearby and taken all the Games Workshop fans out of my shop, and so I can't sell Games Workshop stuff anymore. So it was an unfortunate development that I had no control over.
Yeah.
Now, Farscape is a lot of fun because I had this comic book called Mr. Stuffins. And the idea behind it was a little boy's toy, it's like a Teddy Ruxpin robotic teddy bear.
Yeah.
Gets inserted a secret agent chip. And so this robotic teddy bear turns into James Bond overnight.
It sounds so cool.
So it was really fun. And so it got into the hands of Lisa Henson. And Lisa Henson is the daughter of Jim Henson.
Jim Henson, yeah.
And so she runs the Jim Henson Company. And so she partnered with me to produce the movie, and we were running around pitching it to the studios. And I had this I still have this tremendous friend of mine, Ed Dukeshire, who is a letterer, but also publishes under Digital Webbing. And he was a huge Farscape enthusiast. And he said to me, you need to ask Lisa if we can do Farscape.
Mm-hmm.
And so lo and behold, one day we were over at the Fox lot sitting in, we were about to go pitch a movie. So this is my life. I'm about to pitch a movie with Jim Henson's daughter.
Yeah.
Okay. We're sitting in reception and I say, hey, I'd really like to publish Farscape comics. And Lisa says, you got it. So,
just like that.
That's how it happens. So then we did Farscape. And I think we drove the Henson Company a little crazy because we published 2 Farscape monthlies. It did really well for us. And that's a lot of material. That's 44 pages of content a month. And so those poor Henson people trying to keep up with us, we were pretty prolific. But that was a lot of fun. And it was a very enjoyable deal to do.
So was that kind of your way into because you did stuff for the Muppets as well, didn't you? That was kind of like...
they're totally separate because
okay.
Yeah, the Henson family had sold the rights to the Muppets to Disney.
Right. Okay.
And so that's wrapped up in the Disney deal. And so the guy, Adam Fortier, that brought me Warhammer,
mm-hmm.
he called me up one day and he said, do you want to do Pixar comics? And I said, yeah. And he said, I've been pitching that idea for 10 years and I can't get anybody to say yes. Did you just say yes to doing Pixar comics? I was like, oh yeah, for sure, definitely. And he was like, I can't believe that you said yes. He was like, why don't we do Muppets too? And I was like, of course. So we went and we pitched Disney and we pitched them on doing those comics. And I'll tell you, when we did the Pixar comics, we were the first company that was ever approved by Pixar to do new original content with their characters. No one had ever been able to tell any story that was not an adaptation of one of the movies.
Wow. And that was in the whole Disney and Pixar thing was in 2009, wasn't it?
Yep.
That is a massive achievement. Like for anyone.
Thank you.
Disney is known worldwide. It's got its parks and everything, its movies and stuff. So I guess that must have come as a shock to you that you pitched it and it got accepted and it was...
See, you don't understand how insane I am. I thought for sure that we'd get approved. And I didn't understand at the time how difficult it would be to get approved. Mm-hmm. But what I felt like was that I felt that those characters were incredible, that you could tell a million stories with them.
Mm-hmm.
And I had relationships with writers, and editorially, I could winnow through they asked for like 12 story ideas as examples of possible springboards of stories we do.
Mm-hmm.
And I just kind of sat down with each of the movies and thought about what would be within the narrative confines that wouldn't break the rules,
mm-hmm. but
would be interesting to people. And so then, called up a bunch of writers and had them create log lines. And, I think my wife's a screenwriter, so she probably came up with 4 or 5 of them and of the 12. And, my poor wife, she's fine. She does great.
Did you get paid for this?
Of course not. So, but it's like I went through there and I was like, these 12 ideas are really, really good. I know they're really, really good. And then something had been happening at the time. I don't know if you remember the Flight anthology.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
So Flight had happened, and Flight was really special because Flight it was a bunch of animators.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah.
That loved comics.
Mm-hmm.
And the style that they used in that anthology was so fresh and whimsical, and it was full of potential.
Mm.
And I looked at that and I thought, oh, that's how you do the Pixar comics, is you make the comics look like Flight. And so I went through online and I looked for artists in that vein. And so we commissioned a raft of that we could then, sort of show and demonstrate what the material would look like. And so then we sent those covers in and we sent the story premises in. And the problem that I have is I'm such a perfectionist in my heart. You know, I'm the nerd in class that always wanted to make an A. And so if I didn't make an A, I'd beat myself up. And so I just was like completely like, these are the best 12 ideas and these are the best 6 covers and we're going to get this thing. And if they turn us down, they're crazy, you know? So.
I mean, just to have that drive is, it is great. And it's such a great thing, like seeing it in person. So yeah, you are crazy. You are I'm going to go over, and the name Boom Studios kind of says it all.
Well, I named my company Boom, right? So I'm not a shy retiring wallflower. And, you know, God bless my wife, because I know that I could be fun to be around for an hour or two, but, you know, for an entire year is a bit much. So
I'm pretty sure my wife would say the same, but we've got 3 boys as well. So if it's not me causing havoc, it's one of the boys as well. So
you need to buy your wife some flowers for sure.
I actually did the other day.
Yeah,
I bought her some flowers and some chocolate truffles.
You're smarter than me.
So I'm in the good books at the moment, but
Good.
we've got a joint account, so we kind of both pay for them anyway. So, so I guess like going from Disney and Pixar, that's a massive momentum occasion in itself. But then moving on to 2012, obviously Adventure Time.
Yep.
That is another step in the right direction, as it were. It's obviously for the younger fans out there, it's still going strong on Cartoon Network. It's still a huge success in the comic books as well. And then obviously with that, you launched Boombox, which is Lumberjanes as well. I mean, did you possibly think things could get any better at that point? Knowing you probably did, yes.
Well, Adventure Time's early success, I was pretty blown away by. And I'll give you an example of, I remember on the first issue that we were sitting around in the office. We knew that we had to do a second print on it. And the most conservative people in the office thought that it would be 7,500 copies for a second print, which is a giant second print in the periodical business. And I thought they were crazy. And I'm usually the one that's going too big, you know? And so I just trusted, you know, they were conventionally so conservative. I just trusted that they were right, and they were. But it was just absolutely staggering and mind-blowing. I think the first issue the original sales were around 7,500. So like basically, you know, we would have sold 15,000 on the first 2 prints. And I think we went further than that, that book. And eventually we'd sell 1 million copies between the periodicals and the graphic novels and everything.
Wow.
It was insanity. And it was just this thing where it was, you know, one of the things that's not as glamorous to talk about is your cost structure really explodes in situations like that. And, you know, when you have huge growth like that, and you've got more series and more spinoffs, and then Cartoon Network really pressured us to do original graphic novels. Mm-hmm. And graphic novels are very expensive, not just because books are more expensive than comics to print, but because you have to pay the writer and the artist on a graphic novel to do 150 pages before you are able to publish any of it.
Right, okay.
As opposed to a conventional comic book, you can get paid 20 pages at a time, mm-hmm. right, as you kind of serialize the book. So anyway, it was an insane time. It was a tremendous blessing. It was incredible, but it was kind of hair-raising mm-hmm. altogether, you know, because every day there was a new challenge when you got up. I'll quote Paul Levitz. He said, "Comic book publishing, it's drinking adrenaline for breakfast."
It is so true. It is. And then, I mean, then we go on to Lumberjanes, and that's insanely popular.
Yep. There's another 1 million copy seller. The thing on Lumberjanes was, like, there's a way in which with Adventure Time, mm-hmm. I kind of knew and understood it because I played D&D growing up, and I think what Adventure Time is, and I've had conversations with Penn Ward myself, where he kind of confirms this. But it's basically like Nintendo's sensibility married to a D&D structure. Right? So every episode is an adventure in D&D, but told through a Nintendo lens. And I had, I was not a big Nintendo guy, but I got that and I understood that aesthetic and I understood that world. Whereas Lumberjanes was just that thing that like gripped people. And, I was never a Girl Scout. I didn't go to Girl Scout camp and I didn't have a little sister, but I sort of knew and I've always been a fan of the stories that comics can tell, and that they can tell any story. And so I really wanted to do the series because of its experimental nature. But then sort of when Adventure Time, sort of picked up and went, I could understand it was a pop culture phenomenon. Yeah. But it was attached to a TV show that was exploding. Whereas with Lumberjanes, there's no TV show. Yeah. And it just turned into this complete hurricane. And it was really kind of beyond all of us. I think there are some stories that you tell that they are so correct. Like I'm not going to compare Lumberjanes to Star Wars, but I think there's some times that George Lucas looks at Star Wars and it's kind of like, it's almost beyond me. And I think Lumberjanes is like that, where it's like, I think it's bigger than anybody. And
can you see Lumberjanes going into like the TV series, the cartoons and stuff like that, or do you think?
We sold it as a cartoon show to HBO Max in a bidding war, so I sure as hell hope so.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. Well, they have some commitments in the contract, so we'll see how that works out. So, they sure as hell better make that show.
I really do hope so, because if it's the transition of how Adventure Time went from the comic into the TV show, I think it can only be great for obviously Boom. It can only be good for the comic book readers, the TV fanatics and stuff like that. So it's exciting times, I guess.
I think if they make that show, I think it'll. We did it with Noelle Stevenson, who is one of the co-creators of the comic, and she was the showrunner for She-Ra on Netflix. And so she's an in-demand showrunner because She-Ra was very well received. So I think that she's perfect because she co-created the original series and she knows how to run a successful cartoon. And so if there's kind of no better version that we could put together than Noelle in charge. And HBO Max is an exciting partner for sure.
Yeah. And I think we're going to go on like it was going to come up. Power Rangers was going to come up, but the next milestone in my memory of Boom Studios was in 2016. Power Rangers #1 comes out. It outsells everything that Marvel Comics put out that month. That is a huge achievement. That goes back to what I was saying.
We outsold everything that DC put out except for Batman 50. That damn Batman 50. Batman 50 hadn't happened, we would have been #1. We could have outsold everything Marvel and DC did.
Do you know how much it didn't outsell it?
What's that?
Do you know how much it was short from selling it by?
I don't, and it's probably good that I don't know that because it would torture me.
Could you imagine it was just one comic?
that I think Batman 50 was a hell of a lot bigger than us. So I don't think it's like that. But that was an incredible moment. And I think one of the things that had happened was we had done a Power Rangers Zero. And part of our philosophy and approach with Power Rangers Zero was that we felt that Power Rangers would have a big audience. And our concern was that it had been published by a number of publishers before us, and it had never been successful. And one of those publishers was Marvel. And so we thought, well, retailers probably don't know how to order this book. If we put out a one-shot and it's Power Rangers Zero, what that'll do is they'll be able to order a single self-contained story and understand how big their audience is in their shop.
Yeah.
And then that'll set our levels at number one. So suffice it to say, Zero was very successful, but Zero came in at around 50,000 copies. And then number one came in at about 125,000 copies. So they had seen that they needed a lot more Power Rangers. So,
I mean, Marvel must have been looking at that thinking, how did we not make this work? And Boom Studio came in and boom.
I don't think Joe and Dan think that. I think they go, they're my friends. I don't really know Joe, but I definitely know Dan, and they're good dudes. And they sit there and go, you guys are working really hard and you're doing a really good job, but you got a really cute tricycle there, buddy. You know, drive by in their Ferrari. So, you know,
it's still great though, isn't it? I mean, obviously Power Rangers is massive at the moment. Like we were speaking at the beginning how it's taken off, and does it become not boring, but does it become quite tedious sometimes that people just want to talk about Power Rangers all the time?
You know, look, here's the thing is, I remember when nobody cared.
Mm-hmm.
So if someone is excited about our publishing, I'm only happy and grateful. And so if they want to talk about Power Rangers, let's talk about Power Rangers.
Mm-hmm.
I'm totally cool with that, as long as they're not trying to convince me to hire them to write the comic when they've never written a damn thing in their lives.
I'm gonna rip up my next question then.
and I tell you, I did a famous Instagram post about that that got a big reaction, and I noticed in some Facebook message threads, and I didn't even post it to Facebook. So let's be clear: somebody taken it off of Instagram, migrated it over to Facebook, and started a Facebook conversation about it. And in those threads, there were people that had never written a comic book before that were complaining that I was an elitist because I was unwilling, you know. And my joke about that is, you know, you would never go to a professional. I call it soccer. You call it football.
Yeah.
You would never go to a football game and buy a ticket, sit in the stands, and then go down at halftime and tell the coach to put you in.
Get off and not run on. No, you wouldn't do it.
Right.
Do that.
But certainly people feel comfortable coming to me insisting that I need to hire them to write Power Rangers, even though they have never written a comic ever.
Mm-hmm.
So, and of course I don't see anything wrong with what Ryan Parrott is doing, because he's been very successful for us.
Which leads me on to my next thing. So obviously, I would love to know, what do you think? Are you preferring Mighty Morphin at the moment or Power Rangers? Now, obviously, for two first issues, the way that it's going, one comes out before the other one. And it's great that they're in the first issue, they kind of interlock. It was great to see, like, they all come and it's all going to kick off, and then obviously Zordon and everything. It's going to grow into something amazing. What issue did you prefer from the two, if you did?
Oh, you will never know.
That was one question I was trying to aim for, and that's fine.
That's terrible. How could I do that to those creative teams?
No.
They're doing such a great job. It's so much fun. You know, the thing to me that is really incredible about all of this is, you know, you look at the editor Daphne, and she has done such a brilliant job reaching into the mythology, and she's worked in concert with Bryce Carlson, who's our VP of editorial, and Bryce is a Power Rangers guy, and he was the champion of the license. He was the guy that came in and said that we should do this. And he has, you know, sort of eventized the Rangers, and Daphne has figured out the different parts of the cosmology and the mythology and how to extend and, you know, create big moments like Lord Draken and the Ranger Slayer, and created all this excitement. So, you know, I'm not telling you which one's my favorite, and I'm not telling you who the new Green Ranger is. So.
That is a gripping, like, the Ranger Slayer was insane, and me and Tom from Not Quite Mint, we're gonna start doing a monthly show. So when Mighty Morphin comes out and Power Rangers come out, we'll be doing like a live show on my channel. We'll be talking about it. So we'll be talking about every issue. And one of the talking points, I think, from when this comic came out was, who is the Green Ranger? And I think it's so gripping, like the talk around it, like all the fans on Instagram. I'm talking to people messaging, who do we think it is? Is it going to be? No, it can't be that. It's too simple. They wouldn't do that. But then you kind of, are you doing that? Like it's just such a talking point at the moment.
I'll give you some information and a story that won't help you, but you'll be amused by.
Okay.
And it won't answer your question. So, IDW just had this big smash hit, The Last Ronin series came out, which I'm friends with all the guys over there. I'm so excited for them. We did this crossover with the Turtles and the Rangers, so I cheer for IDW. I think it's a great company. And I came back to my team and I said, what we need to do is we need to do the Last Ranger.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, but our twist is going to be, if it's the Last Ranger, the question isn't who is the Last Ranger, because it has to be Tommy.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But the question is it Tommy or is it Draken? And that's what you don't know.
Oh, see,
that's good. It's good.
It's very good. That is very good. That is very good.
That's spread across the internet like wildfire.
I mean, did you even see, like, going over to RDW for a second?
And by the way, to be clear, that is not happening. Okay, so
it's not happening, guys. It's not happening.
It's not happening. So tomorrow, when I wake up and I look on Facebook and it says Boom is publishing The Last Ranger and it's Tommy or Draken, that's not true. That was just when I saw The Last Ronin. That was the idea that I got.
Yeah. Did you enjoy The Last Ronin? I was gobsmacked at the end. I was kind of like, I weren't expecting it.
Look, I will tell you, Kevin Eastman is a buddy,
Mm-hmm.
and I couldn't be more excited.
Yeah.
Kevin is so wonderful. Like, what is your dream of what you want one of the co-creators of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles to act like? And that's what Kevin Eastman is. Like, Kevin will sit there and, talk to you and spend time with you and answer every single turtle question you have. And, I was at San Diego one year and I sent my nephew to go get in line to go get his autograph. And I said, when you meet Kevin, I want you to ask Kevin the print run of Turtles #1, every printing. And Kevin sat there and told me the print run for every single iteration of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles #1 from 1984. Wow. And nephew came back and it was like, he said it was this and this and this and this and this and this. And I think in the middle of San Diego Comic-Con, with all the craziness, and if you ever seen Kevin's line, it's gigantic, right? And he sat there and he took the time for some, teenage punk at that time. My nephew might have been 19, and broke it all down for him. I mean, I just love Kevin. Kevin's the best.
Mm-hmm.
I've never met Peter. I would love to meet Peter.
Yeah. I mean, it must be great. And it's kind of like, he was on my friend's show, and they were talking about like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and he was so relaxed. He was just sitting there. He was like, just ask away. Pretty much how you are. Like, just ask me. If I don't want to answer it, I'm not going to answer it.
His answers are better. My answers are a little cheeky, but his answers are better.
But that one about, like, is it Tommy? It's got me thinking. I'm like thinking, right.
The question is it Tommy or Draken? That's the question.
Or are they the same person?
Well, you got to buy it to find out. Or this is the reason why I don't run editorial per se, why I'm not the editor-in-chief, is I would probably throw in it. If I was editing that book, I'd throw in a curveball and I would make it like a third version of Tommy that you haven't met yet. So it'd be like the total fake out.
Of course you would.
Not everybody would be mad at me. So,
I mean, it must be great to write stories like that, and especially like work within an environment. Is Boom Studios at the moment? Is it still very much female led?
Well, we're 60% female women. So, it is. It's not anything that I ever did on purpose. I just wanted to hire smart people that were great at their jobs, and it turns out that 60% of Boom is female. So I just like smart people.
That's good. That's
great at the job. And so you got Daphne on Power Rangers. You got Shannon co-created the Lumberjanes.
Yep.
And then Sierra just had a killer book come out, which it's the Kurt Vonnegut Slaughterhouse-5,
Yeah.
which is on its way to sell like 30,000 copies of a hardcover. It's completely bananas. And she also did the Brian Azzarello book Faithless, which was a big smash hit.
Yeah.
So we've just got brilliant ladies, and of course my CFO of the company, Joy, she's a genius. Half the day with her today figuring things out. So just, I'm a lucky lad. What can I say?
I mean, it is great. And I think that with like everything that's going on at the moment, I think we can all agree that with the likes of Something Is Killing the Children, that is probably one of the reads of the year for me. It's absolutely insane. You've got Once and Future, you've got Mighty Morphin, you've got Power Rangers, Lumberjanes, Alienated, which for me was...
Well, there's a British production, right? That's a British creative team.
Yeah, I had... I can't remember the artist's name.
Chris Wildgoose.
Chris Wildgoose. He was on my show a couple of weeks ago. And
the greatest in the world, right? Wildgoose? I mean, that's just amazing. The guy's lights out genius.
Yeah. And it was just insane. Like I'd read his Porcelain run, his comic and stuff like that. Yep. And then to have him on for Alienated for me touched on so many emotions that are kind of taboo. Like you had the mental health, you had the young underage pregnancy and stuff like that. So you had everything like that. And it was just a great comic. And for it to end the way it did, it was like, where do we go from here? How is it going to end? But it was great. And then obviously you've got the likes of Seven Secrets. Boom is just going from strength to strength at the moment, Ross, and it just must be an incredible time to be part of that.
Well, you know what's coming next?
What?
My buddy Keanu.
Yes, obviously, yes. It's Cyberpunk, isn't it? Cyberpunk.
No, it's called Berserker.
So, how could I forget that? It's on your bloody homepage of the website. It's right there.
Yeah, it's going to launch in February. And so it is Matt Kent is writing it with Keanu Reeves. And it is being drawn by Ron Garney. And it's a 12-issue series. And it's a story of an immortal. So it's basically the Berserker. He can trace his lineage back to the Mesopotamian era. He's the sort of Babylonian civilization. And I'm trying to figure out what we've said in media and what we haven't, so that I don't give too much away. But there are some videos on YouTube where you can go watch Keanu talk about it himself. So it's a lot of fun. Like we got a phone call. We have a team that's devoted to media, and what they do is they convert our comic books to movies and TV shows. And we got a phone call that was Keanu Reeves wants to pitch an idea. And so I went into my office and sat down on the couch, and Keanu Reeves stood up in front of me and pitched me a comic book. And what would be your answer as soon as Keanu finished speaking?
Yes.
Yes. And I'll tell you, Keanu was a huge comic book fan. He bought the Wolverine limited series by Frank Miller and Chris Claremont off the rack back in 1982. And he knows his writers and his artists. When he got done with the pitch, he said, we'll get Raphael Grandpa to draw the cover. And so when you see on Berserker, one of the covers is by Raphael. That was in that first pitch. It was back in, I think, maybe 2018, might have been 2017.
Because I've been reading the Bill and Ted Are Doomed run that's currently out at the moment. And again, that's just like, it's like all the stuff from my childhood, like the 80s, it's all coming back. It's like retro clothing. It's all coming back round.
Well, I'll tell you my theory about Berserker, and I have not had this conversation with Keanu, so this is not, again, hey, internet, this is not me saying that Keanu told me. Okay, This is just my theory. But like when you look at John Wick is the franchise is very Armani, right? It's beautiful, well, the architecture is gorgeous and the colors are rich and everything is high class, and the Continental as a hotel is posh, and the violence is like a dance. It's like a ballet.
Yeah.
And if you look at Berserker, Berserker is completely the opposite. It's like gritty, dark, violent. Like it. I mean, they're both violent franchises, but like it's a totally, hairy, bloody, gritty. It's like the opposite. And I think it's Keanu, having done 4 John Wick movies, going completely the other way. Like, we were sitting around trying to figure out how to write the solicitation copy for comic shops so that read it, they would understand what the story is.
Yeah.
I kept teasing my marketing team, saying that what we ought to say is, hey, comic book fan, have you ever wondered what it would be like if Keanu Reeves was Wolverine? That's what the story is. Yeah. Now, there's a bunch of differences because Berserker is much older than Wolverine.
Yeah.
And he obviously doesn't have claws, and he doesn't have a costume, and he's not a superhero. But that kind of Berserker fury, that's feral, sort of toughness, is definitely similar to, the tone is similar, and the kind of violence is similar.
It does look pretty. Just to have Keanu Reeves, I mean, because obviously he's done his movies, he's got like the PlayStation 5 computer game coming out, Cyberpunk 2077. He's got the comic with this. He's got it all going on. But I mean, I could just imagine sitting on a sofa and Keanu Reeves is pitching a comic to me. I'd be blown away. It would be so surreal. Had you known him before he came in to pitch this comic? No, you hadn't.
Nope. No, but like, there's a part of you that I've had so many surreal moments in my life. I've had, I produced a movie called Two Guns, and it starred Denzel Washington and Mark Wahlberg. And I've been on a movie set and had Mark Wahlberg come in the morning and ask if there was anything he could do to help the production, instead of, here's what you're doing for me. Right. So let's think about what a role reversal is when Mark Wahlberg is offering to help you. Right.
Yeah.
And what he did was he picked up the phone and he called the studio and he asked for $150,000 more. So when Mark Wahlberg says, "Can I help you?" what he means is, "Can I help you?" Okay. So I've had moments when we did a comic book with Sam Jackson called Cold Space. And Sam meets a lot of people, as naturally he would. And we worked on the project through a bunch of different meetings. And there's no question in my mind that he forgot my name, which I did not take personally at all for a second. Okay. But what he did was he started to call me Mr. Boom.
Mr. Boom.
Which, let's be real, I actually now prefer to my real name.
Yeah.
So if anybody wants to call me Mr. Boom, much less Sam Jackson, all it will do is make me happy.
I should have changed it. Instead of Ross Richie Boom, I should have had Mr. Boom.
Well, let me just tell you, if you're ever playing a networked game and somebody shoots you down, runs by laughing, and their screen name is Mr. Boom, that is me. Okay. So it's my screen name everywhere I go. Any reservation I put in, Mr. Boom is my name. And so I've had a pretty crazy life. So I got a nickname from Sam Jackson. I've had Mark Wahlberg offer to help me. I could go on and on and on with, Nick Offerman, doing a voice record for an animated pilot that nobody ever saw with Nick Offerman, and explaining to Nick Offerman what character he's playing. And I've had R.L. Stein, Bob Stein, pull me aside at New York Comic Con and tell me that the best publishing he's ever had in his life was Boom. Best publishing experience he's ever had. So it's a moment when, you're sitting there, you're looking at Keanu Reeves, and there's also a little bit of you that's like, makes sense. This is sort of the crazy ride that I'm on, which I'm only grateful and happy to have. But this is another experience in a series of really incredible experiences. And so it does not suck to be a comic book publisher.
And I guess you're kind of used to it now. It's like, oh, what surreal experience are we going to have today?
Used to it's a little strong, but it is pretty amazing how, one of the great things about all these great actors is they're very open, creative people. And open, creative people really like the medium of comics because they can see that it has tremendous potential that it hasn't completely tapped yet. I think they get excited about that. And I think that's why you see so much media translation happening across the channels. So I've got story after story after story, sitting in South Africa and Cape Town shooting this movie that we just put out called The Empty Man.
Mhm.
And just having, again, these amazing, incredible, I was sitting there on the set when I got the phone call that 20th Century Fox wanted to invest in the company. And, there's just these incredible life moments, so I'm only thankful for them.
So it really does suck to be you, doesn't it?
Well, it's
It really does.
I said before, it comes with a lot of firefighting. So
Exactly. No, it does.
you got
Going back, like one of my first ever purchases was this Fanboys.
yeah.
Right, and I got this in 2012 when it first came out.
Thank you. The mighty Sam Humphries.
Oh my God, I absolutely love this.
Thank you.
It was around the time of where the Comic-Cons and stuff, and it was all going on. And this, like, when I moved house years and years ago, I only managed to keep the 6 issues. I don't know where the rest of them went. So I kind of went on like an eBay scurries to find them, and I've got them all and stuff, and I've read them all again. And they're in the boards and bags, and they're in like the plastic sealants and stuff. So like my little boys can't touch them. But obviously that's ended now. I love this. Is there any chance of this returning?
There are no current plans, but we shall see. We have a Netflix TV deal right now, so maybe that would be, who knows. Now, hello internet. I'm not subtweeting anything. So,
yeah. But that kind of leads me on to my next question. Is obviously with Netflix being one of the biggest like subscription-based streaming services out there, signing a partnership with them must have been hugely exciting. And how did you feel? Like, how was you actually astounded with that? Because obviously Netflix, Something is Killing the Children, there's talk about that having like a TV series run and stuff like that. Was that kind of another moment where you're like, wow, things are actually going up another level now?
Well, look, Netflix is a great partner, and had sold material to them before the first look. And so we had gotten to know them through the process of shopping material as well as actually setting material up. So like I'm trying to think about the different things that we can talk about. I know that like The Unsound was announced. And so that's David F. Sandberg, who directed Shazam, is doing that project with us and Netflix as a movie. And so it was very exciting. My thing is, I think that we have a tremendous number of series. I think it's over 300 that these creators are incredible.
Mm-hmm.
And there's huge opportunities to turn them into movies and TV shows. They need to be great comics first. You need to take care of, publishing great comics. That's the most important thing. But once that's taken care of, do they have potential as film and TV shows? Absolutely. And so what was exciting to me was Netflix, they're known for making a lot of content very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So when you turn on Netflix, there's always something new to check out. And so to me, with a company like Boom, which creates a lot of original content and in my opinion, a very high level of quality, or at least we aspire to then have a partner that creates a lot of content very quickly at a very high level with great quality, it just felt like a good match. And I just felt like, here's a group of people that I respect. They're really intelligent. They're great folks. They're really fun to work with. And how can we get together with them and get into a closer relationship and focus on what we both want to do, which is unlock a bunch of really cool series that we could be really proud of.
Yeah, I mean, because I could spend hours trying to choose something on Netflix, and before you know it, it's midnight, and you're like, I've gone through every genre and I haven't watched anything yet. But I think that's the love of Netflix. You either know what you're going in to watch, or you kind of spend half the time beating around the bush, and you kind of go into like a Netflix black hole of, you start off wanting to watch a comedy and you end up with a thriller / horror that you didn't really want to watch in the end, but then you end up doing.
Did you see that? I've forgotten which head cheese at Netflix said to the press one time. The press said, "Who do you consider your competition?" And he said, "Sleep."
It's true. It is true, because you can go obviously with it. I mean, if you go back to the years of Blockbuster, the whole thing about going to Blockbuster, using your Blockbuster card to get your video, to get your takeaway and sit down and watch it, and you had it for 2 nights and then you had to take it back. With Netflix, it's accessible 24 hours. And the thing I like about Netflix is that when you sit down to watch a series, before you know it, you've done 7 episodes and you've lost half a day.
There's a really great documentary called Netflix versus the World. And it basically starts with the creation of Netflix, and it tracks.
Netflix?
Well, I actually didn't watch it on Netflix.
Okay.
But I watched it on Tubu, I think is what it's called. But you would enjoy it, because it tracks the Blockbuster versus Netflix arc, and exactly what you're talking about with the fees.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But no, I mean, it's great because I think it went from Blockbusters, then it went to like Love Film or something, and then like Netflix now and stuff like that. But I mean, it's very exciting to see. Like, I would 100% love to see Something Is Killing the Children in TV format, because that, for me, that comic, the whole arc of it, having like James Tynion, who's absolutely killing it on Batman at the moment, and then going over to Something Is Killing the Children, it's very exciting. To be a comic book reader at the moment, it's very exciting.
Well, I think it's a great series. I'm really proud of James and what he's doing. He's succeeding in a big way right now. Mm-hmm. All of it's earned. We're really proud of the fact that with Something, issue 11, the first print of issue 11 outsold the first print of issue 1. Mm. So if you know how comics sell, that's pretty difficult to do. Yeah. And so it's just, the sales have been just a complete rocket. It's insanity. It's craziness.
I mean, I think last week the LCSD foil variant came out, and that is a piece of beauty in itself. That is,
I like it.
Oh my God, it's incredible. But I mean, something like that is like, from James Tynion working on Batman and Something's Killing the Children, it's like anything he's touching at the moment is turning to gold.
Tell you, he's I did a over 2-hour interview with him on my YouTube channel.
Yeah.
And it goes from when he first discovered comics, and it tracks him from a kid growing up in Wisconsin and going all the way through the arc of breaking in and building his career. And he did the work. There's no question. He's been in comics for 10 years, and there's a lot of folks that were not reading him before Batman, and we're not reading him before Something Is Killing the Children. Mm-hmm. And the reason he's been so successful is that he put his time in, and he wrote a lot of stuff and worked really hard at it for a long time.
Yeah. So, and that comes across. You can clearly see that the passion and everything is in everything that he's doing at the moment.
Yeah, it's amazing stuff. He's a great dude. It was a pleasure to do that interview. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. No, I've got halfway through. I think we're like 25 to 45 minutes left, I think. But it's just great just to see you talking just about how it all happened. Like kind of what I'm doing with you now. It's kind of just really good to see how you interact with the writers and how you get like into their psyche and stuff.
Thank you. Well, part of what I'm trying to do with the show is I want, I have questions of my guests, and those would be questions that ordinarily I would take over dinner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We'd be at a convention, and I would go grab somebody, and we'd go out to dinner, and I'd be like, hey, I always wanted to know this, or I always wanted to know that. And so part of my approach is to just bring the camera along for a dinner conversation that we would ordinarily had at a show.
Yeah.
But beyond that, since I've jumped into my Instagram and sort of gone in to interact with fans more, what I see is there's a lot of curiosity about breaking in, and there's a lot of curiosity about craft.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, YouTube is a place that will be around for a while, and I could store up some content here that could be there 10 years from now. And it could be a resource for people It could, the dream is that the next James Tynan is watching that interview and learns something from it that they can then use to become the next James Tynan or Kieran Gillen or whoever else it is. And so how do you create a situation where people can get access to information? I have 2 daughters, and I tell them all the time, the sum total of the world's knowledge is at your fingertips. Like all of the knowledge that has ever existed for mankind is on the internet. And you just need to know where to look. You just need to understand how to do a search string. So, with that in mind, I hope that there's a lot of different interview shows, and creators do a lot of interviews. But my thought process was there's no publisher that knows comic book history and knows the way that comic books are created that's doing those interviews. And so I can ask these folks questions about where they started, how they started off, what were their influences, what were they trying to do, what was the intention, and take them through a journey. And, I've recorded my next 2 guests, and they're folks that are alongside, Tynan and Kieran Gillen. They have staggeringly unique break-in stories of breaking into the business, and everybody does it a different way. And they couldn't look at their work more differently than each other. They have probably virtually zero in common. And I think it's fun to get into the details and understand the little choices. Frankly, I find myself, some of these, like with Kieran, we went for 3 hours. And one of these other guests, I went for 3 hours. I could have easily gone for 4. And I get a little worried every once in a while. We get so much into the nitty gritty that maybe the audience will get bored and wander away. And so, I try to keep it to 3 hours. But it's hopefully it's a lot of fun. Hopefully it's something that people get something out of that's inspirational, or it answers a question. I've got a segment up on the YouTube channel right now where Ty breaks down how he created Punchline, and he's real specific. And so, maybe that would be interesting to collectors, or it would be interesting to readers and aspiring comic book writers. So,
because the one you did with Titan, and I was at work at the point, and I kind of put my phone down and was like listening to it, and it came across as a podcast as well. You could kind of just sit back, listen to it without watching it as well, which is kind of great, because podcasts during lockdown and everything, they've really taken up. I think it's like 705% up on what it was in 2018 or something. So
that's amazing.
Yeah, but it is definitely something that, as you mentioned, like it's at the world at your fingertips. And I learned how to do the YouTube by watching videos on YouTube. Yeah, absolutely. Me too. If you say that I've learned how to do YouTube, I'm not sure I have. I'm definitely not very good at editing or production value, or you can tell from the way I'm lit that I need a lamp. Yeah. But I got a long way to go, but hopefully the audience is tolerant of that. But I think it also comes down to, like, when I do the live shows and stuff, things happen, like your internet drops out or a comic might fall off the wall and stuff, but that's kind of it. Like I do like the top comic releases videos on a Monday. I do the live shows on a Thursday, and it's just interacting with the comic book community and people that are reading comics and publishers and CEOs and everything like that. It's kind of just delving into comic book. I think over the last couple of years, comic books have it's not as taboo as it used to be years and years ago. If you was reading a comic, you was a geek, you was a nerd, which is why I kind of put it into my name, Geeky Guy Comics, because I'm a geek, I'm a guy, and I read comics. So why wouldn't you just put all them together? Yeah. And it is just great. I love reading comics. What do you get any time to actually read comics? Well, it's something you got to make time to do. And my curiosity is really high. And so I'm always curious about what's going on in the market. And so I'm always picking up, I almost have like a self-discipline about picking up first issues from independent publishers. So I'm always picking them up, always checking them out. I'm always looking for, I think one of the best examples
of success recently is Donny Cates.
Oh.
And Donny really worked hard and published a lot of series at independent publishers before he had the big breakthrough with Venom. And so, you just gotta be on the lookout for who are those exciting new voices that are out there.
Is Donny Cates someone that you'd like to work with in the future?
Oh, for sure. And I know he's the world's biggest Buffy fan, so we're going to be working together someday.
He doesn't even hide that fact. He's quite vocal in the fact that he loves Buffy.
Yep. Well, Donnie, you know where I am. You got my email and my phone number.
Hopefully watches this and he gets in contact with you.
Yeah. Well, he's got he's got the world by the tail. So I think the move is Donnie's. Whatever you want.
Like we did a review show last night on last night's show, and the main focus of it towards the end was the King in Black, and it was something that he's touched on. It's absolutely killed everything at the moment. So yeah, fingers crossed. I'm hoping all the stars align, and one day you two can actually work together, and we can have a boom Donny Cates moment. That will be absolutely insane.
Be fun. He's a good dude.
Yeah, that would be great. I mean, what has been the highlight of your career so far? I mean, it's been surreal. It's been fast paced. It doesn't seem like you get any time to relax. It seems like you're constantly on the go.
Yeah, I mean, look, I have had so many beautiful moments that I can't comprehend. I just had I had the blessing of there's a consulate for Chile here in Los Angeles, and they were having a media conference, and so they wanted people to come down for film and TV, and also for comics, and so they paid to have me fly down to Santiago and do a 3-day conference about comics. And while we were down there, my wife and I decided, because Easter Island is a part of Chile, decided to go to Easter Island. And so, never thought I'd ever do that. I didn't even know where it was. So, I think I probably thought it was in the Atlantic somewhere. I don't know. And so, it's amazing. And for me, another one is got a definite career highlight is, we did a Rush comic. And Neil Peart is their drummer, who's widely considered by rock critics as the, one or two second greatest drummers of all time, next to like John Bonham. We did the Rush comic, and then we got an email from Neil who said, now that the project's over, I'd sure love to come in and meet you. And I understand you can't meet Neil Peart, at least during that time period. He never did any fan meetings and never did any meet and greet.
Yeah.
Walked into the office and sat down and hung out with us for an hour and a half. And I pulled out my Rush Moving Pictures vinyl and had him sign it, and unfortunately he passed away. He passed away probably like a year and a half later.
Oh, wow.
And, and I was able to see his second to last concert ever. And so you just have these amazing moments. You just got to grab them with both hands and, keep your feet on the ground and, appreciate them. Yeah. And, I'm very lucky. And, the joke is the harder you work, the luckier you
agree with that. And I think what you've just been touching on there, like stay grounded and stuff like that. One of the videos that you did on the other day on YouTube and Instagram was when someone wrote into you and you replied to them. Now, going on to that, have you got any advice for like artists and writers trying to break in at this precise time?
Sure, absolutely. Look, hard. Like, we're going to get into some real talk here for a second. So the hardest part of breaking in as a writer is, I am right now working all the time. I have no time. So if you're a writer and you write a script, how am I going to read that?
Yeah.
Now, if you're an artist, I can look at a page and I can tell.
Yeah.
And I've done that enough. There's a number of different people, like Raphael Albuquerque is a great example of, like, I was the first person to publish him in comic shops, right? And I could look at Raphael's work and I instantly knew he was a star.
Yeah.
And so as a writer, it's really hard to overcome the fact that you can't just look at a page and know if somebody's talented.
Yeah.
And so with that as a barrier, what you have to do is you have to flip the script, no pun intended. You need to get rid of the mindset, which is it's too hard. It can't be done. And what you have to do is you have to go, okay, so there's a bunch of artists that are out there and they don't have anything to draw and they want to break in as much as I want to break in. And so I'm going to go find communities. And a lot of times on my Instagram, people are discussing what are the creative communities that you can go out and become a part of. But I know that there's a bunch on Reddit, for instance. And go out there and find a short story, let's say 4 pages. Okay, that's hard to write. Write 4 pages, maybe 5 pages, have a punchline, have an ending, but it's a small commitment for an artist. And then let's say you put that together, go find a bunch of buddies, okay, and everybody, let's say 8 people do 5-page short story, okay, then go kickstart it.
Yeah.
Pick a, here, rip me off, okay. The first book I published was called Zombie Tales. Okay. My joke is, guess what it's about? Right? It's a bunch of tales of zombies.
Yeah.
So find a banner that you can do it under. Is it science fiction? Is it cyberpunk tales? Is it horror tales? What is it? Is it slasher tales? Like steampunk tales? I don't know, something. And go find something that 8 creative teams can do. You can kickstart it. 8 of you can reach out to your friends and your family to crowdfund it. And I guarantee you that there's a bunch of people on Kickstarter that would be interested in whatever you're interested in. And go get published. And then you've got a 4-page, 5-page story that you can send over. And you can send to publishers. And there's a bunch of publishers now that are filling their slates. Yeah. And they're publishing a lot of material. Look at Scout. Scout is putting out a bunch of books.
Yeah.
Right? And so there's lots of opportunities. Scout's a great company. And there's a ton of these publishers that are out there that are putting out really good original content that are looking for new voices. And so there's opportunity for days. And what you got to do is you got to look at where the opportunity is. And you need to have the discipline and the vision to execute on what the concepts are. And I'll tell you something over and over and over again in these creator interviews I'm doing. Kieran Gillen, I just put up the second hour of the Kieran Gillen interview, and he goes into the fact that he didn't have an artist. So what he would do is he would take his camera with him to the club, and he would take pictures of him and his friends in the club. And then he would go home after, develop the film, and turned it into an online comic. Now, that's commitment and vision.
Yeah.
Right? And he talks about sitting down with 9-panel grids and doing little mini comics and finding artists that would collaborate. I mean, he did the work, right? And so you've got to decide, Sun Tzu's Art of War says that you have to decide that you've won the battle before the battle begins. That's the only win.
Yeah.
So you've got to decide, I'm going to go do comics. And I don't need anybody's permission.
Yeah.
And then you need to go do them. And the thing is you do them, you show them off, you're going to get a reaction, you're going to get a lack of reaction. And if you have a lack of reaction, you should listen and try to figure out what you're doing wrong. And if you're getting a good reaction, listen and try to figure out what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong. And then you need to build on that. So
that's kind of what I got from your feedback with that, is that it's very inspirational, and coming from, I watched that and took away from it, and it is very true. If if it's something that you want, you'll work hard at it, and you'll put the time and you'll put the effort in, and you'll reap the rewards that are there to be reaped, I guess.
Well, the thing that you need to keep in mind is it's very, very competitive. A lot of people want to do it.
Yeah.
And so if I'm looking at 20 people and half of them have demonstrated the discipline, meet deadlines, and to be published, and to work with an artist, and to work with the publisher, they're going to be ahead.
Yeah.
Right? Cool. And so it isn't just about you as a writer. It's about demonstrating that if you get an assignment, that you'll do the work.
Yeah.
Because there's people that won't.
Yeah.
Right? They'll decide, they'll put their tiara on, and they'll decide it's all about them and their artistic vision. And, look, you've got to be fulfilled as a creative person. That's important.
Yeah.
Right? You got to tell something you believe in. But you also have to be collaborative, and you have to hit your deadlines, and you've got to be professional, and you got to do the work. And so, and the more that you can demonstrate that, and you can demonstrate that you're professional and you get the work done, then that opens up opportunities for you. But if you sit back on your heels and you decide, well, I don't know, this is all too blah, 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 and you invent reasons, then you'll never get there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, it's true. I think if you take that within anything you do in life, you only get what you put in at the end of the day. If you give good, you get good back, and no one's going to do it for you.
Yep.
So, but that is it, Ross. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on, mate. Honestly, it was. I didn't think it was going to be possible. I reached out to you. I wasn't expecting a response, but it just shows the actual person that you are. So thank you so much for coming on to this little YouTube show from the UK.
You're very kind. Thank you for how you support the company. Before we go, I talked extensively about my YouTube channel.
Yeah.
I would encourage everybody to check it out. If you like it, hit subscribe and hit like and then comment on it, because we all know that that's how you support on YouTube. And if you do that, YouTube likes us more, and you'll get more of that content. And so I say that. We've also talked extensively about my Instagram. Same thing. Please go there, give it a click, give it a like, give some feedback, so that we can keep doing what we're doing, and spread information so that everybody can learn. And hopefully we have some fun along the way.
100%. It's really fun to watch. Like, obviously, Boom's got their Instagram, they're putting stuff out, you're putting stuff out. It's an exciting time to be alive. Boom Studios are one of the most popular comic book companies in the world at the moment. It's the stuff that you're putting out, you very proud of. Me as a reader, I'm excited, I'm passionate about reading your stuff. So once again, thank you for having the team that you do working with you, putting out the stuff that you do. It's enjoyable every week watching the comics that are coming out, and it has been an absolute pleasure of mine having you on my channel, Ross. So thank you once again from England all the way over to sunny Los Angeles. And I have to point out, I love the fact that my backing around the YouTube page that I put together is matching your shirt and your jacket. So I'm kind of it's like the stars aligned for that one. So thanks again.
I love it. Thank you so much.
And I will let you go, Ross, because I think you run like a comic book company, so you're probably busy. So I'll let you get off and do that.
All right.
Ross, thank you so much, mate. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
See you later. Bye-bye. Hi everyone, so thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed it. As you can see, he's a fantastic guy. He's really easy to talk to. There's so much going on. He's had a crazy life, and it doesn't seem to be slowing down anytime soon. Make sure you do give him a follow over on Instagram, Facebook. Check out his channel over on YouTube. It's just started. He's interviewing some fantastic artists and writers, so it's all happening over there. And also check him out on Twitter as well, because he is active on all social media platforms, so make sure you check him out. Guys, as always, it's been fantastic. I love doing these shows for you, and as always, you should know this by now, but if I don't see you for a week, I'll see you through the Geek Eye window.